Okay.
Alright, are we live?
Yeah.
Everything look good?
Yeah.
No.
No? It doesn't look good?
No.
Okay.
We have to introduce ourselves, right?
I think
Yeah.
well, no, if it doesn't look good, then we just have to restart. So
All right.
yeah, so
All right,
just go ahead and restart the recording.
I just restarted it.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
No,
Josh,
I was
does it look
kidding.
good?
It's supposed to be.
I just restarted it, so we're good.
Yeah. Alright, so we're good?
We're good.
No.
But now I gotta restart again because we need to just start with the intro.
Oh no, okay. Yeah, we'll restart and we'll redo
Alright,
the whole
so
intro.
3,
Yeah.
2, 1.
Alright, how does it look now, Josh?
It looks great. I
I'm
guess.
Derek.
I'm Cord. Alright, we're using our real names.
Are we using our real names?
I just
thought
used
we
my
were-
real
I
name.
thought
we were
I
using-
just
I'm always
used
Josh.
my real name.
I thought
Well,
we were using
no.
pet names.
Josh is an alias, by the way. Derek is the only
No,
one who's
yeah.
used his real name.
That's true.
No, yeah, because Cord's a fake ass name.
I
that,
mean-
like, who the fuck would name their kid
Who
that?
would name their kid Cord?
All right, in the way back.
I don't know.
We'll restart it.
Okay.
All right. Anyway,
No, but are we doing a semi-jokey start, or are we doing?
I assume Derek didn't actually hit restart this whole time.
yeah, we've been recording the whole time.
Yeah, this is going in.
I mean,
Oh.
You're on the fucking roller coaster now.
Yeah.
Man, I have to turn on the persona, man.
No, you don't.
Gotta be indignant.
Please don't turn on a persona. That's exactly what I don't fucking want. All right. Yep, but we might as well acknowledge the audience. Hey there, lovely people who are listening to this. This is Game Case, the podcast stuff we're doing. And today I wanted to start the discussion with Symmetra. Specifically, and what's indicative of how she's been kind of like built and stuff like that. We'll just have a conversation on Symmetra and how holy fuck, Overwatch Blizzard, what are you doing? Fucking seriously.
Well, I think a good way to start this is, guys, what's your favorite Symmetra? There's 3 of them.
That's what I was going to get into, is defining the multiple different Symmetras so that we have a ground base for which one we're talking about.
But I just want to know
Okay.
what your favorite Symmetras are.
Oh, 2.0.
Yeah,
Fucking-
same. That's what we're calling it, by the way. The original
Yeah.
Symmetra 2.0, which would be the Symmetra that has the 2 ults. And then
I guess I gotta be the Black Horse
New
and
Symmetra.
Black Sheep.
we got the new
Who's
Symmetra.
3.0.
You don't have to be
Or
anyway.
3.0 Symmetra.
New
Okay,
hotness, man.
so Symmetra 1.0. This is the base that got changed off of. Her primary fire was the lock-on beam that ramped up the longer it was on a single target. The secondary fire was the energy ball that charged up over time and could pass through shields when it was charged. She had 3 sentries, each of which were extremely low health and didn't build at the beginning. Like, she didn't start with 3 at the beginning of a round. She had her photon barrier, which at that time was she looked at a character and she hit E, and they got 25 points of shield, just forever. And her ult was the transporter that came from spawn and had 5 charges. 2.0.
Only 5.
What?
Only 5?
Yeah, only 5.
Wow,
Everybody
I thought
could
it was like 6.
Everybody could teleport once.
Man, you can't even get your entire team there.
One
One person's going to be left behind.
I might be wrong on that number, but I was pretty sure it was 5. 2.0, her turrets got upgraded from 3 to 6, and I believe they were under the same build rules. That she didn't get them all at the start.
She
but
did
she
not
could have
have...
6.
I don't think she actually only had 3 turrets at 1.0.
At 1.0, she had 3. In 2.0, she got 6.
I don't believe you. I think she always had 6.
Check the patch notes. It's on the official site. I double checked it.
Alright, fine. I'll just believe you. I'm just misremembering, I guess.
No, it's all good. Photon shield change became the floating Reinhardt shield that could, like, push and reflect stuff back at people. Her
I think it
ults-
only absorbed things, right?
Well, it had 600 health, if I remember correctly. The patch notes didn't have the number on that.
Yeah.
But it bounced shit back. At least, again, it said in the patch notes. Her ult changed, which was the biggest one. that she picked between her two ults. She could either put a teleporter from spawn with the charges, or she could place down something entirely new, which replaced the old photon shield, which was a shield generator, which gave everybody much more shields, but in a limited area, and it could be destroyed. So could the teleporter. 3.0 is the one that we know now, where her primary no longer tracks targets. It still does a ramp-up effect, but it doesn't track targets anymore. She's back down to 3 turrets, but she tosses them as soon as you press the button where you're aiming, instead of having to do the place-down mechanic. Her ultimate is now just one ultimate, and it's a big flat shield that covers the whole level in a singular direction. Her energy ball, I don't know when specifically this happened, but at some point her energy ball stopped going through shields, like Reinhardt shields and stuff like that. And the teleport now puts a teleporter at your feet, and she can place it in the world at a higher or lower elevation, and you press F on it to move it. It no longer comes from space. So when we're talking about Symmetra 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And just to be clear, her teleporter turns into was it a shift or an E ability?
Her teleporter's now an E ability.
Yeah, it
replaced
ultimate.
the photon shield.
Teleporter used to be an ultimate, now it's an E ability.
So photon shield no longer exists except as her ultimate.
Well, it's
which is
completely different.
Shield. Yeah, so shield generator doesn't exist anymore at all.
Yeah, which is so sad.
Yeah. So Josh, why? So we have a 2-to-1 ratio right now. So why do you like 3.0 as opposed to 2.0?
So the main reason I was actually excited every time Symmetra got reworked.
Yeah.
But the main reason I was excited by 3.0 was the opportunities that giving Symmetra a teleporter she can just place down for a couple seconds gives her, which can allow her and her party to teleport anywhere pretty much within line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it gives the game is a way to make characters that have pretty bad mobility get to places that they can't normally get to other than walking through a line of fire. For example, getting really slow characters up onto high ground, or characters without mobility onto high ground, is super important in Overwatch. And she is the only one who can do that. You can't get a Bastion up on top of a ledge without him walking a really circuitous route, unless you can use Symmetra for that.
That's true.
I can see that opinion, but here's my thing. Why the fuck did we have to lose all the other cool stuff to only get that?
See,
that's my problem.
I agree. There's 2 things I really like about New Symmetra, and there's only 2 things I really like, and that's that 1, she can throw her turrets now, and 2, the teleporter, like you just said.
They completely keep changing the fucking character instead of just making a new character to fulfill that role. I wouldn't even be mad if Symmetra lost her teleporter to a brand whole new character, and they built a whole new character out of all the things that Symmetra can no longer do.
Yeah, because Symmetra 2.0 and Symmetra 3.0 could be 2 different characters.
Yeah, and they even have somebody in lore. There was that comic that she came out with, where with the guy she was working with, I think his name is Sanjay or some shit. I'm probably wrong, but there's literally a character standing next to her that whole time, and they could have just given him all the new shit and fixed Symmetra 2.0 shit, or just fix Symmetra 2.0's shit. My biggest problem comes down to the ult being that big map-wide photon barrier thing. First off, also the just complete eradication of her role as support, in the fact that she's not even the support category anymore. Technically, we lost a support hero and we gained yet another fucking damage dealer. In those spots, and I know
she
technically
stopped being a support hero a long time ago.
Yeah,
I mean, she was never a very effective support.
Even in in our hearts, right? She has not been in that section for a long time. But they could have very easily, like, with the teleporter being on her instead of Spawn, that opens up a lot of possibilities. The shield generator opens up a lot of possibilities for her to not be heal bot support, to be a new kind of support.
So I think Overwatch has always had the pretension, or like at least, or to put it more nicely, the aspiration, right?
Yeah.
Of having its supports reflect something more like a MOBA game, where they're about providing your DPS and your like team good initiation abilities.
Yeah.
So allow them
DPS,
to, like,
aka gods in their own eyes.
Yeah. But I mean, I think they wanted support to be that, but eventually it's something where support just came to mean healing in Overwatch.
Yeah.
And I think it took them a really long time to accept that. And effectively, there was like no support role aside from healing after a while. And like I think the repositioning of Symmetra as a defense hero, or no, as just a damage dealer, I guess now.
Yeah, that's another thing that we could talk about.
Since they consolidated those things, I think it makes sense that she's like they just reclassified her.
Yeah. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, while she might have been a support, maybe at the very first couple of days of the game, she definitely was not towards like later parts where people figured out how the game works.
Yeah. So, like, that also brings me into another issue of just, like, the eradication of the defense hero. And I think Symmetra's a really good example of that, of them trying to take everybody in, like, a whole new direction that I just think design-wise is flawed. Because, honestly, and not as interesting. Because, well, first off, we've lost the entire defense bracket, right? Like, they got rid of that whole section and stopped balancing people around support. Now, the pseudo meta, like the default meta that everybody thinks, right? Whether or not this is true right now remains to be, like, I don't have the exact expert in, but the main meta that everybody thinks in these types of games is 2 tanks, 2 damage, 2 support, right? So they changed the design philosophy of a lot of heroes and even their fucking character select menu to reflect that. Instead of it being, no, certain characters have certain jobs and they're not always, that ideal meta isn't always gonna, like, fall in line. They're instead, I hate to say the phrase bending to the wish of the bending to the will of the players, because, like, that would indicate that the players don't know the game better than the developers, and that's often not true. But it means that the characters can be less, and we can have less of a design shorthand for them, right? So, like, classifying Symmetra as a defense hero used to be pretty accurate. She has the sentries that take a little bit of time to place down. She has a shield generator and teleporter, which can't move. All of that. But since now we're kind of getting rid of the idea of defense heroes in general, it limits the kind of heroes they can make and that we will accept. Does that make sense? Or am I talking out of my ass?
The problem was, like, I follow a little bit of, like, the Overwatch esports scene.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is, like, part of the problem was, like, a lot of the defense heroes ended up getting put into attack roles.
Yeah, because there is no defense role anymore.
Well, it's something where a similar thing happened in Rainbow Six Siege, where they created a character named Tachanka, and they thought that he was going to be pretty strong, but it's just that the developers didn't understand how the game would be played. Yeah. And the game just evolved past him, and he's pretty irrelevant now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, and hashtag change Tachanka for the good.
Yeah, but I think Overwatch experienced the same thing, where, like, people even though people don't know what's good for a game, like the lay people, they are definitely going to be really good at one thing, which is finding what, like, the optimal playstyle is.
Yeah. You see, but then, like, we run into an issue, like, so let's take, what would you say is played more commonly, not as an esport, but like quick play? Would you say that the single hill King of the Hills played more, or payload? Just what do you?
I mean, I think it's pretty evenly spread in quick play because they don't get to choose.
It's I'm pretty sure it's randomized, so
yeah, it's probably pretty evenly spread.
You see, but like for me, in my experience, I remember my payload matches more, right? Because at least in like the earlier days, every hero had a unique role, whether you were on attack or defend or stuff like that, because of the way payload is designed. Now, with the way that Rainbow Six is designed, it kind of makes sense that a defense-oriented character would get wiped off the map because it's all about mobility and information and stuff like that, as opposed to Overwatch's design, which is much more about the interactions between the characters and the objectives, in which case they're a lot more fluid, not just because of the numbers we're dealing with in terms of like time to kill and stuff like that, but the fact that these characters are, even if you just fuck with their numbers, their basic ability design is so flexible that, like, designing a character around a certain type of play is a really good idea, especially if it's like defense or something like that. And then you fuck with their numbers, and as long as like their abilities check out, like thematically, and I hate to use the word synergize, but like work with each other so that they are like that character, you can have a character that's all about defense. And we had one. It was fucking Torb. Yeah, Torb on attack was hilarious, but like how viable was that, right? But Torb was a really good pick on defense because of the way he was built. But now, and if we move into the Torb discussion, I have a couple of notes to say on that as well. But now, with the way he's built now, they made attack Torb. Defense Torb kind of doesn't exist anymore. He's just weird and nebulous in the middle Torb, and I feel like that means that he doesn't succeed at either role anymore.
So, I guess addressing like the Torbjorn like rework, I think. So from my experience, it's something where Torbjorn was good on defense and like certain compositions. It also depends on like what level of play you're talking about as well.
Yeah.
Because it's something where Torbjorn was definitely extremely strong when in like lower levels of play or in casual play. But I saw his utility, I guess, definitely peter down, especially on like payload maps, because he is sort of a static defense hero. Yeah. And I think part of the problem with him was that his playstyle was not very fluid. And he was a very boom bust, like famine or like flood hero, where if you could get to the point where you got his ultimate, you were pretty good and you probably were going to win the game on defense. But if you couldn't, the enemy could blow through you, and it turned out to be a pretty bad pick because he's not able to do the damage, like once they're on top of you.
Yeah.
And they've taken out your turret.
Okay, so then with that being the perspective, then what do you think about like new Torb in that manner? Like, what role do you think he fits now in a higher level of play?
I mean, part of me still thinks that he fills a similar role. It's just that he's got a little bit more flexibility put into him. He's also, I think his ultimate also contributes to him having a role as a anti-tank or especially anti-armor hero. Which
like
has gotten
the puddle thing, right?
Yeah, because it does extra damage to armor characters. Like, it's something where the characters that are really strong right now are like really big tanks, or Brigitte, who has like an ultimate that gives everybody armor. And like armor initially was designed to like make it so that characters like Reaper and Tracer weren't as strong, but it has pretty bad effects on the rest of the gameplay sometimes because there's nobody who has like armor pen, I guess.
Yeah. So then my response to that becomes, then why change Torbjorn so drastically, right? Why not just tweak him so that what were his issues either become less apparent or make his benefit higher, and then take those new things that you were going to put into Torbjorn and make a new character out of that to solve the problems of the design. Because to me, his new ult feels really out of place. We lost the fun scrap mechanic, where it's like with enemies dying around you and stuff like that, you could pick up their scrap, and didn't lose that on death or anything. Like they could have used that to help, like, maybe build Torbjorn front momentum or something. Like, to me, it really feels like they lost all the rubies looking for a diamond, right?
Yeah, I think so. While I don't don't agree with Blizzard's design philosophy, I think I understand what they're going for.
Yeah.
Which, one of the things that they constantly emphasize about Overwatch is they want their heroes to have as little overlap as possible. And I think one of the problems is that they're just not willing to blister off a hero with somewhat similar abilities while preserving, like, the old hero, and instead want to improve all of the heroes in the game to the point where they're all similarly viable, which it'll have varying degrees of success, but it's something where it's consistent. So
then we get into the viability argument, and that is also a worthwhile discussion. I'll just make a note really quick.
Yeah, I think it's just part of the general movement from Overwatch or Blizzard side, where they want all of the heroes to play more fluidly, where it's something where the gameplay flow is more natural to, like, each individual.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think that's a fair thing to want, but by them wanting each character to be so different and have their own unique playstyle, that's the reason why they take so long to release characters, and the characters are so separated, and I think that's a huge reason why the community is falling out of the game. Like, the player base is definitely shrinking. I mean, it's not dying by any means, but the player base is definitely shrinking. And as for the Torb discussion, I just wanted to say that I do think new Torb is more fun than old Torb.
So the thing is, there is a little bit of bias on my half when it comes to that, because I liked old Torb. When they're done correctly, I like builder characters. I wouldn't say that he was perfect, but there would have been some changes, but, like, the changes that have occurred have gotten rid of all the things I liked about old Torb and replaced them with just kind of something that I'm like, oh, okay, so this is just slightly different Symmetra now, in a way.
I do agree, though. I want a building hero, which is why while I think new Torb is more fun than old Torb, I think that, again, like I said I think you said, actually, with Symmetra, I think that there could have been place for it to be another new hero. Obviously they would have had to change some things.
So, the fact he doesn't have to build his turret anymore is lame. The fact that Scrap is gone is lame.
I think I'm definitely the most sad about Scrap.
Well, because it also gave him a bit of a support thing. It's like, yeah, you were a backline guy, but you built up the Scrap and you gave your teammates armor, which, like you said, is really powerful right now. And it helped save him in his fights. You just aim at your feet, you hit E, and you have a little bit of health to maybe get you through the fight you're in the middle of, right? It's like, so Torb became a damage when we had a damage/support hybrid. I feel like it's more like they're trying to put heroes into the 3 boxes instead of letting us have hybrids, right? So
you could argue technically, we still do have hybrids. It's just that Blizzard does not like builders as much anymore.
Yeah. Well, you see, now I'm worried about the other hybrids that exist because we just lost 2 hybrids, right? So Symmetra's no longer really a hybrid. She doesn't have any support. I guess you could consider her in a way, kind of like with her ultimate, like a pseudo DPS tank, but
I'd say her
Like, that's
ultimate
just
makes
like
her
ults.
kind of
I
support
think-
more than tank, but
So I think for the hybrids, I would actually point to like Doomfist and Brigitte specifically.
Why
as
Doomfist?
being-
I get Brigitte, but why Doomfist?
So Brigitte is like a mini tank with like healing abilities on the side, right?
yeah.
Yeah. That's
Doomfist
pretty
is
straightforward.
somewhat similar in that he's a tank and he's more like an off tank, where
Oh, with
each
like his combo thing.
each successful hit displaces the enemy, like and makes space, and then he also gains, what is it, the special blue shielding
Yeah,
from that as well.
it's
which,
not shield.
is
It's like
more-
the Lucio ult shielding. Right?
Yeah. I think they call it shield, but they really do need a different name for it.
And a different
Because it
color.
behaves differently. It's dark blue versus like light blue.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is,
no, like an entirely different color. Like make it green or something.
Yeah, but it's something where he does fulfill some of the roles of a tank. I feel he's not particularly strong as like a tank, but
Yeah.
he has a bit of like that DNA to him.
Yeah, I guess in kind of a way, but like I always think of Doomfist as a damage first, because you can't unless you're doing your damage job, you can't tank well. So it's like the damage always
Yeah.
comes first.
I
right?
mean, Sombra would have been another hybrid character, but she has gotten much more focused in the damage role.
I actually like the changes to Sombra, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, me too.
Like specifically the fact that she just gets to be invisible. That's really fun, and it lets her kind of fill the role of like the spy from Team Fortress 2, where you're behind everybody and shit, and it's a lot more deliberate.
Well, with
at
Sombra,
managing your cooldowns.
they didn't change the way she works. They just changed like basically her numbers.
That's what I was going to come back to.
Yeah,
was
so
that's why I like Sombra.
Yeah, and that's something I feel could have been done with all the heroes they've reworked. To just focus on the abilities they have, focus on improving those abilities to make them a viable hero. You don't need to remove abilities. You don't need to give them brand new ones.
I mean, I think part of the it goes back to like this really harsh or push and pull that I think that like Overwatch Blizzard has within like their ranks, where from what I've heard, people argue all the time about like what the best way to balance or change different heroes would be, or change particular parts of the game. And I think one of the problems is that Blizzard really, really likes their characters to be distinctive. It's something where, like, whenever you see any of the characters, you see their outline and you know exactly who they are, right?
Oh yeah,
That's
they do
true.
good. They do good outline work.
Yeah.
Like, their silhouette is distinctive, and I think part of what they want with Overwatch is to make sure that each character has like a very specific thing that they're good at.
You see, but then we get into issues that like I just kind of like I see where you're coming from, and I see like how you would get there, but I just can't agree because Orisa exists. And Orisa does one thing different from everybody else.
How?
And she does Fortify. And that's kind of the main thing she does differently.
I don't think any other character has a deployable shield, do they?
Well, so like,
I mean,
yeah, if you're
you
thinking
have
about like the
Winston,
range and
technically,
stuff
but
like that.
Oh,
But, like,
Winston. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Winston,
But-
Reinhardt, and Brigitte. Also, then you get issues with like Ryan and Brigitte where they basically have the same right click. The left click for Diva is just not Diva. For the left click for Orisa is just a longer range Diva attack, really, just because of how unfrequently you have to reload. It's
You
like,
mean
hey,
Zarya?
Zarya still has to reload, but I'm saying Diva in the there's that corner. I could keep shooting down that corner and not really have to stop. Right click is Zarya ult, but minied. But the thing is, I could give them that one because you get to use it so often. It has way different uses than a Zarya ult, but I can only slightly give that to them. The only really unique thing that Orisa does compared to all the other heroes is Fortify, where she gets gold, she can't be moved, and she takes half damage. Not really the most interesting thing. And okay, full disclosure, Orissa's my favorite tank to play. I love Orissa. She's a big centaur spider bot person, and she's rad. But if I'm looking at it critically, she's kind of amalgamation of a bunch of other heroes with some numbers changed.
So part of me
Yeah,
really hated Orisa when she was first released, but I think people do give her a little bit too much flack for having abilities that are exactly the same as other heroes. Part of me actually wants the game to be, a little bit more like that, where there is more overlap.
So that's the thing. If tomorrow Blizzard went, okay, so we realize that we haven't been releasing a lot of heroes. Here's 14 heroes that all look entirely differently and have different silhouettes, and we put all the work into their visual and stuff. But mechanically, there's a lot of overlap with heroes that already exist. Okay, let's work from this. Right? Like, if they were releasing, 6, 7 heroes a year, and the argument can be made for a lot of them that they're on Orisa level of originality, I'd be absolutely fine with that. But whenever we get a new hero, and it's basically if Junkrat 76 had a baby and fucking McCree carried it to term, right? Looking at you, Ash. Then I'm a little disappointed. Don't get me wrong, Ash looks rad, but that's a whole other discussion. And I want to stay on this one for a little bit longer. That if their design philosophy does come from a place of we want all of our characters to be snowflakes that are all really distinctive from each other and fill a certain role with no overlap, I'm not seeing that design come through on a base level. And that's before we even get into fucking damage numbers and shit, right?
Yeah, I think it's something where they want that distinctiveness of identity between the heroes, and I don't think, I think that it's really difficult, right, to create heroes that feel significantly different. You're not going to be able to put out a Doomfist or a Hammond all the time.
Yeah.
But I think part of a really significant part of their philosophy is to make sure that, especially for heroes that are a bit beleaguered or are encountering a lot of troubles with, especially affecting the community negatively, like Symmetra and Torbjorn were for the longest time. I think part of what they want to do is make it so that these the people who one-trick these characters are less of a burden on the game.
All right, I'll just make a note of one-tricking really quick, because that's another thing that we could probably talk about at length.
It's something that's definitely part of the identity of Torb and Symmetra, because I remember hearing about this a lot. The infamous Torbjorn and Symmetra one-trickers who would be in ranked.
And then it'd be if the other team saw that those guys were on the team, they'd already have a strategy because they knew they would just be playing that person.
It's something where you're missing somebody who can be putting something useful out for the rest of the team. But at the same time, it's something where I think that's more social controls.
Yeah. Oh, actually,
than gameplay.
I've actually got a pretty good segue if we want to talk about that. Derek, did you have anything else on what we've been talking about that you want to address?
No, I'm fine. We can move on.
Okay, yeah, because I've actually got a pretty good, if we're still talking Overwatch, I've got a pretty good transition that we could do to talking about what tricks. So do you remember when the game originally came out? And do you remember specifically Blizzard talking about how in this hero shooter, they want people constantly changing heroes, right?
Yeah.
That was something that they said. Do we all remember this?
Yeah, and I just want to note that I don't like that philosophy of design, even though that's what the game's centered around, but we can continue.
I think a lot of the problems that Overwatch has are actually due to that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot better if we could just choose our heroes and then have to be stuck with them. Or Cord suggested this the last time we played Overwatch. If we could choose like 3 heroes, and then you have to rotate between those 3 heroes as you play.
So actually, let's do this discussion for a little bit before I go back into it. Just to be clear, you guys don't like the idea of we want people constantly changing heroes?
Yeah, I'd prefer it if you just had to choose one hero and then play, and that's your hero.
So on a philosophical level, I do not have issue with being allowed to change heroes mid-fight.
Mm-hmm.
But on like a sociological level, I think it's a flawed system. It incentivizes people to put blame on others for decisions that negatively affect the game and not properly assess themselves. Like when you are playing like a DPS and like 4 other people on your team are a DPS, but you're doing well, you don't look at everything and say, "Oh, I better change to like a tank or a healer because we're losing the game. Like I'm winning the battle, but we're losing the war." Like that's not your thought process. Your thought process is, why the hell don't these other, losers, these jokers, switch off of their heroes that they're not doing well as and switch to a tank or a healer?
Look at me, for I am the DPS. Suck my dick, for I am God. Yeah, I get you.
But this naturally leads to toxicity, and eventually, for those people who do play support or tank, it leads to burnout because
they always have to.
I always have to be tank.
It's an obligation.
Nobody else will do it if I don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's continue on this thread for a second, and I'll interrupt it here in a couple of minutes with a secondary point. What do you think would be a good mechanic replacement to incentivize a good team play to A, make sure burnout doesn't happen, and C, encourage it? So let's say that scenario happens.
I mean,
honestly, you are the DPS god amongst men. You have the highest KD. What mechanic or what incentive, if any, do you think there should be to incentivize those of lesser ilk to switch to the lesser roles, so that you may play your godlike role?
Okay, so you're asking what should be the incentive of switching heroes?
Yeah, like what? We don't have enough tanks.
All right. Well,
how should people know that, and what should be the incentive?
Currently, Overwatch is
in
punishing.
A casual environment.
Currently, Overwatch is punishing you for switching heroes. For a game that wants you to switch heroes, it punishes you by getting rid of your ult charge. It's like, we need a tank, but I'm at 80%. I'll wait. I'll wait until I can use my ult, then I'll switch. If that could either A, carry over between heroes, though I know there's a problem with that, and I'll get there, or B, if there was a way that charge could stay on that hero specifically, so if you went back to them later, that charge would still be there, then I think that people will be more willing to switch heroes. The problem is, if you make it so you can switch heroes and bring over the heat charge, the problem is that heroes charge at a different rate. Some heroes gain their ult a lot faster, and that would create this environment of people picking the heroes that charge their ult quick, and then switching to the heroes that have the best ults or the most useful ults.
Yeah.
But I think the second system, where if heroes retain their charge, I think that'd be a much better system.
I mean, I think it's something where I would be okay if it was like a 25% transfer.
Or even, actually,
where if you had 100% charge, you got 25%, or regardless of how much charge you had, you would carry over 25% to the hero that you're switching to.
Yeah. No,
because 50% is probably much too high.
Yeah. I think that would be a good system too, but as it is right now, why would most people, I mean, I've done it, don't want to switch if they almost have their ult.
Or you fall into the trap of thinking, I have my ult, I'll just stay on this hero for a little bit longer so I can use this ult. And then, if I die, I'll go back. But usually by then it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think those are all good ideas to start with, and we could workshop this a little bit. My main thing that I wanted to bring up, Derek already touched on it a little bit, is why the fuck is your design, I want people to change heroes, and then there literally be no mechanical incentive for that to fucking happen?
Yeah.
Who was on the fucking table going through it and going, oh no, it's fine, we'll just put that out as our main message, we want everyone switching heroes, and then they don't have a fucking mechanic for it?
I think it's just that they didn't really have anybody on the team who really thought in terms of incentive structures, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's
that's totally fair, but that's kind of my point.
Well, no, that's totally fair for when the game first released, but it's been out for a long time now.
Yeah,
and they still
I think part of it is it's like I don't think they have anybody who really understands like what incentivizes people to play a certain way.
Yeah.
All right, all right, Chad, put our email up. Fucking send us a job offer. We'll fucking do it for you.
I think part of it is that Overwatch has, like, Blizzard as a company has a sort of weird philosophy, at least like the Overwatch division does, where it values player freedom and agency a little bit too much, to the point where I think it's actively bad for the game. It's something where there are no corrective tools to prevent people from doing harm to themselves or others.
Can I get an example? I think I'm just a little bit lost.
So it's something where, like, for example, they would, whenever they talked about toxicity, they would say, like, it's the community's job to do better.
Stop being mean, guys.
Rather than implementing an anti-toxicity system.
Yeah.
For example, when people complain about, like, people not choosing or filling the right roles, the onus is on you to fill the roles or to play right, quote unquote.
Okay.
And do what the game needs. There is, like, it is supposed to be the player choice that drives the proper result.
Yeah.
And it relies upon the player being altruistic in, like, a competitive multiplayer FPS.
Yeah.
Which, sorry to say, the incentive systems in the game are not designed to make people altruistic.
Yeah, like there's no reward for being a good person. There's only rewards for being a good player. Like, shoot good.
Pretty much. And it's something where, like, because of that, you don't get, like, for anybody who's approaching it from anything other than a fairly casual point of view, Overwatch becomes incredibly tiring to play over time.
Yeah. Which, I would say that would be an issue with game modes. Which I think would be a good transition into another bit. Chad, pause for a second. Chad, pick it back up here. Okay, so we just took a quick break. We were just coming off the conversation about heat, right? And alt build.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the last thing we said?
Yeah.
No. I actually I remember things like a goldfish.
Yeah.
On a legitimate level, I do.
Yeah.
Like,
so,
things that.
Yeah. So just assuming that we wrapped up the conversation with that, because I feel like we probably did. I actually think it'd be interesting if one of our last segments we move into today is talking about one tricks, the good, the bad, the ugly, and all of that. So let's start. Derek, what do you think about the idea of one tricking in the current system?
Well, in the current system of Overwatch, it goes against what I guess they want you to do in the game, because they want you to switch heroes. But I usually don't have too much of a problem with it in this, as long as the people are reasonable and they realize that sometimes they're not going to get to play their one tricks. But if we're talking about, there's also toxic one tricks who, no matter what, I am playing Torb. No matter what,
I am Hanzo.
I will give me Torb, or I will throw. Give me Torb, or I will throw.
I take offense to that. I used to be a Hanzo one trick. For like my first 78 levels of the game.
I identify as Bastion.
But
I
yeah, so
identify sexually as an Orisa.
so I kind of see One Tricks as any other player. If they're toxic, I don't like them. If they're not toxic, yeah, whatever. Like,
So-
you do you.
So, what do you think about
I'm-
One Tricks in the state of any given game?
In most games, One Tricks are completely fine. As long as people aren't toxic, and the off chance that somebody chooses their character before them, or they can't play that character for some reason. Like, let's say you're a one trick in Rainbow Six, and every single time it's defense, you are only going to play Frost, for example. That's fine. Just play Frost every single time. But if somebody chooses Frost before you, this one time, just get over it. Just let it go. And in that case, I don't really have a problem with it. But I'm also not, like, hyper competitive. So I can see people who really want a stable team comp to be really annoyed by this, which I understand. So I guess in ranked, I haven't thought too thoroughly about One Tricks till now. I'm kind of developing my opinion while talking right now.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of like that's a very valid like experience to have. It's like, I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Let me think about it right now.
Yeah, so I guess in ranked, One Tricks could be a bigger issue because you're going to want to play with your team and communicate more. But if you're just playing, like, quick games, like quick matches or casual games, and you're like, I have fun playing, let's go back to Overwatch. I have fun playing Tracer, so I want to play Tracer. As long as you don't get all mad and become like a crybaby when somebody else picks Tracer before you, then fine, go be Tracer and have fun. Like, you do you. That's just kind of my theory on it. Just don't be toxic.
Yeah. Josh, what do you think?
So, like, I follow the competitive scene in Overwatch quite a bit, even though I no longer play the game. And for the longest time, one-tricking was one of the primary problems that the community would face on on the competitive scene. Like, you'd even have problems with like things like Mercy one-tricks, for example, where people would complain about like getting somebody who could only play Mercy on their team, and then because of how the SR system worked, like, people would gain rank differentially based on like how they did versus other people who play the same champion or hero. In this case, you would have, multiple Mercy mains in the same game who can only play Mercy, and especially since they changed it so that you can only have one hero of a particular type on a team, like, it results in you almost instantly auto-losing that game if you get to, like, Grandmasters and you have two Mercy mains. Like, what are you going to put the other one on?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in
And
ranked,
it's something where, yeah.
in
But
ranked,
go ahead.
it's I was just going to say, in ranked, I guess one-tricking doesn't really make a lot of sense if you want to, like, be high-ranked and do a good job.
And it's something where, like, Torbjorn is legitimately powerful in certain situations, but one-tricking is also pretty bad in ranked as well, like in the gold to silver, like, elos. Maybe even into, like, plat a little bit. Because what you as a Torbjorn player are doing to the rest of your team is you are forcing the rest of your team to either play around your playstyle and to support it, or to ignore it and then operate at a loss. Because Torbjorn is actually, like, not very strong without the support of his other team members. And because of that, you end up with games where, like, I've played comp for a while, and it felt like the longer the game went on, or like the longer I played, the more it felt like it was less, competitive games with two teams of semi-equal skill, like, fighting each other, and more a competition to see which side will throw less. Because it's always something where you've got, 4 DPS and 1 healer, and then maybe somebody playing an off tank. Or you have a Torbjorn main, a Symmetra main on attack, and then a Bastion sitting in a corner, and then, like, somebody healing, somebody tanking, and you can't make headway with those kinds of team comps in, like, a setting where you want to try to win. And it resulted in just me not wanting to play the game at all. And to me, the most interesting part of Overwatch is when it's competitive, when there is something on the line.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where, like for me personally, I really like team play. But in those situations where it incentivizes toxicity, where it incentivizes you to not care about the rest of your teammates, it makes it very difficult to enjoy the game for what it is, which is a shooter with some really nicely or tidily designed mechanics in it.
No, yeah.
And to me, oh, go ahead.
No. Finish your thought.
And to me, it sort of breaks my heart that, there's clearly a lot of effort and love put into like designing and balancing these characters, but I don't think most people actually get to the point where they can appreciate that to a degree.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can definitely see that. My thing is, I don't like one-tricking. I don't mind if like somebody plays something for a match, but the idea of I play this character always bothers me a little bit, specifically because I am pretty sure, at least for me personally, I absolutely believe that a lot of these changes that I have problems with, the characters that I loved before, but maybe could have used a little help getting into viability, got changed so drastically the way that they did because of people's tendency to one-trick them. And then it's like, well, are we gonna find a way to fix the one-tricking, or are we just gonna fix the character so that the one-tricking doesn't hurt the game as much? And they picked the second option, which I think is really unfortunate, because now we don't have a defense category anymore. We just have damage dealers. And speaking of damage dealers and one-tricking, the Hanzo changes. Let's bitch about that for 15 fucking minutes. If it pleases the courts.
I'm not completely familiar on all the Hanzo changes. I never played Hanzo. I never one-tricked, but I always avoided Hanzo at all costs. So the only thing I really know about his changes is that he lost Scattershot.
He's just better McCree. Let's go ahead and just explain how Hanzo is just better McCree now.
To explain, it's so old Hanzo was he was a 200 HP hero, and he had the same number of abilities as everyone else. He had a shift, which was a sonic arrow, which would like do like a mini Widowmaker ult, lets you see people in like a radius around it.
A good example of reusing mechanics, but in an interesting way.
His E was the scatter arrow. When it hit a surface, it would break apart into multiple arrows. And then around. His Q is, of course, like the big dragon noodles that you send flying across the map.
The killer caterpillars.
Very familiar with that.
And
I've died to it many times.
So Hanzo 2.0 is his shift stays the same, but instead of Scattershot, they gave him Storm Arrow, which is he gets like 6 shots that he can pretty much shoot off like
Yep, I'm counting them right now.
Without pulling back his bow at like a reduced amount of damage.
Nope.
But
so I'm fucking around with training bots right now, but I'm pretty sure they're at full power.
I'm pretty sure it's like they don't do as much damage as like a fully charged Hanzo bolt or arrow though.
I know it's not base, but they deal increase.
Yeah, but I think overall they do a lot more damage.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's semantics. Sorry to interrupt.
His ult stayed the same, but he did get a new ability, which is whenever he jumps while he's in midair, he will dash in the direction that you're moving already.
On a 5-second cooldown.
And that's basically all that's changed, but it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Basically, they gave Hanzo roll and fucking fan the hammer.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
Also, Hanzo can fucking climb up walls. Which means he can get now he can get wherever the fuck he wants. Because he's got Genji's double jump, / McCree's roll, and wall climbing. So if you thought Hanzos were insufferable before...
Honestly, I think partially Hanzo has slightly better mobility than Genji.
You know what? I'm in training right now, just for context, and I'm messing around with heroes while we're talking. And I was just playing as Genji, and I switched to Hanzo while we were talking about Hanzo. No, yeah, he just has better mobility. Like, except that Genji has his shift, which is the blade thing.
Yeah, he has his dash, but at the same time, it's something where you're not going to be using your dash as a movement ability quite as often as you're going to be using it as a...
Also, Genji's double jump isn't on a cooldown.
Yeah. It's something where you can't use it again after, like, jumping off, or while you're in the air after having double jumped once, so...
Yeah, but...
As is typical.
Yeah, but Hanzo can... Or Hanzo has to wait 5 seconds after he uses it no matter what.
So, like, what are your main beefs with the Hanzo rework, other than that McCree is clearly lagging behind?
So, he's just better McCree, and they should have just fixed Scatter Arrow, because it gave Hanzo, in base design thing, before you touch the numbers, right? It gave Hanzo a panic / cover negating option. And if they replaced that with something that gave him either those same options that was still interesting, I wouldn't care. But Scatter Arrow filled in his base design, it filled a gap that Hanzo didn't have in the rest of his kit at the cost of a cooldown, much like an ability should do. You can fire it into a room where you know there's a fucker and deal some damage. Yes, again, Scatter Shot's damage was too fucking high for what it was supposed to be doing, but you could harass people that you couldn't see still with it. Or if you're running away from somebody and you don't want to, do the turnaround hookshot thing, you just shoot it at like a wall as you run out of a room or something, and fill the room behind you with little spindlets that make them think twice about pursuing you. And it was fun and it was interesting. And now he just fires 5 arrows quickly. Thanks, Todd.
Well,
I think this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, while I agree with you that the new arrow ability is less interesting, I just wanted to point out that you keep calling him better McCree, but it's a lot easier to shoot somebody as McCree than Hanzo. It's a lot easier to get headshots as McCree than Hanzo, in my experience, because you don't have to deal with the arrow travel time or the arrow arc when you're McCree.
The arrow does have a slightly larger hitbox, which does make it a little bit more shots. But yes, the travel time does make it difficult sometimes.
No, McCree still has his uses, but that said, Hanzo has been getting progressive buffs to his arrow travel speed, with every few patches, it feels like.
Oh, really?
Honestly, I'm messing with it right now. It does not feel that hard. Admittedly, they're training bots, but I'm practicing on the moving ones. It does not feel that hard to hit these headshots.
I'll tell you right now, it's really easy to do anything on the training bots, even the moving ones.
Well, I'm doing it from across map. I'm not doing it from the area.
I'm just saying that people in games move weirdly, and they do.
They move way more erratically.
Yeah,
but I'm having literally no problems. Chad, don't cut to my screen. That was anyway. But so on paper, he's just kind of better McCree. And it's the hyperbolic nickname I give him, because on a paper design, if you just write out his abilities and what they do and you kind of ignore the numbers themselves, design-wise, it's Journey to the West all fucking over again. It's West versus East.
So, for me, Hanzo's a weird case, because he exemplifies the difference between competitive play and casual play, because Hanzo's scatter arrow, as it was supposed to be used, is not how it's the strongest. And people in higher level play rarely bounced it off of walls to get people around corners. It would always be something that you shot at people's feet like right in front of them to do like a massive amount of damage. And I remember distinctly playing as Zarya and being at full health as a 400 HP hero and just dying to a Hanzo.
So,
it is frightening.
So then my argument then becomes that the numbers were off. They should have fixed the numbers instead of the design. Because that's bullshit. As a 400 level hero, just shooting something at somebody's feet, the whole simple geometry thing not coming into play at all. That's bullshit. And I completely, I can't not agree with that. But they should have fixed the numbers and fixed their implementation instead of just getting rid of the idea to begin with. They should have made the ability what it was supposed to be instead of just replacing it with just completely uninteresting. It doesn't change it's lame.
I think it'd be pretty.
That's my highly scientific phrasing. It's lame.
I think a pretty cool change to it could have been, instead of it just like shooting and it immediately scatters, what if it had a time delay before it scattered? So you shoot a surface and then everyone who's around that surface gets, like, kind of like when there's a grenade near you in other games, you see the little grenade icon. You'll get like a little icon saying like the Hanzo bolt is near you and it's about to explode into scatter.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think the Hanzo, like the purpose of the Hanzo scatter shot was supposed to be like, if you've ever played MGS3, or like if you remember like how Ocelot would bounce bullets off of walls, and hit people, it's basically, I think that was the design intent, right? Where Hanzo is supposed to be one of those characters where you can strategically like bounce something off a wall to get somebody who's behind cover, because you can see them using the sonar arrow.
Yeah.
But I think one of the problems with that is that you need enough projectiles to come out that you're able to get that person around the corner, and most people aren't going to be able to accurately aim something to bounce off of geometry to hit somebody, because let's face it, Overwatch has too many polygons for that.
Yeah.
Or
like things will bounce off at weird angles.
The thing is, the design you just described is really good, with the sonar arrow and the bouncing off walls, and that was really good. And like Cord said, the numbers were off, and now that design's completely gone. What's the design now? He has a sonar arrow and the
and I think one of the problems is that there are unintended consequences where people did use it in a way that was not meant to be used.
So,
because, like, let's say the easiest way to fix like Sonic Arrow would have been to make it so that the damage of the scatter bolts like increases with the amount of distance
rebounds.
Yeah.
Like, so that's just how I was going to bring that up. Just how I would have balanced it. Initial hits consume the shrapnel, and they do minimal damage. The more a shrapnel bounces, the more damage it does.
But at the same time, that results in something where, you might get nicked slightly by something else, and then you're going to be around a corner, and suddenly you'll get hit by like a scatter arrow or a scatter shot that's, either traveled a great distance or way too far, or bounced way too many times, and you get one shot.
So,
and it's something where that's not a pleasant feeling to have.
Well, that's if the maximum is too high. You see, now we're getting into numbers discussion.
But yes, but it's something where there's so much RNG involved that it's not really going to feel great on either side of it.
So, like, I'm thinking like a max of like 2-3 rebounds per piece of shrapnel. It's like it's a quick done. So it's like if you're in a room full of shrapnel, holy shit, there's shrapnel everywhere. I'm dead. But like if you're out of a room, then the likelihood of you getting insta-killed by a single piece of shrapnel is significantly low. Or we go with what you were mentioning earlier, right? If we were redesigning this, which I guess we kind of are, so you equip the arrow, right? You take the scatter arrow, and it puts a new HUD element into the world, like a little like a little ray of like where the arrow will go and where it'll bounce off of, and then that's how you can determine where it's going to go. And then like you just learn how to do it, man. Like it's an advanced skill, and I don't mind there being something that is that advanced on a character that seems simple in premise, but like actually utilizing it's a little bit hard.
So
Because that's
I
way
think
more interesting. And if
I
you
think
have
the
that
problem
skill,
is
that's
that
desirable.
like scatter arrow in concept seems pretty simple to balance, but it's extremely difficult to balance. And I think that they abandoned it because of how difficult it is.
Maybe like engine limitations that we just don't know about.
Well, it's something where, like, for example, if you wanted it to be more reliable, you would simply reduce the damage of each of the shots and then increase the number of them. But at the same time, that sort of changes the design intent because it goes from being somewhat of a surgical tool to being like a shotgun that you place somewhere.
Or maybe you just make it so that any given character can only receive a maximum amount of damage from it. For
But
every
even
instance
then,
of
that's
scatter.
something that's very difficult to do because, you know, each of these scatter bolts can like travel a different amount of time because they do diverge from where they hit.
Yeah.
Then, you know, if you go the other direction and do like one arrow that bounces a certain number of times and you do have that HUD indicator or UI indicator, it's something where I think for most people that it would be extremely difficult to use.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the times when you got kills with it would be lucky shots.
So my thing would just be like, let's say in any given instance, scatter arrow can only deal. Give me a reasonable number in Overwatch terms. Admittedly, I'm not that good with.
I mean, I would say something that's reasonable is making it so that it's not a one shot. So let's say 150 maximum or 100 maximum damage.
Let's go with 100 max, right? So the basic idea would be if you fire a scatter arrow into a room with a tracer and a Lucio, right? You fire the arrow into there, and it does its scatter thing, right? But the game understands that from that one instance of scatter arrow, Tracer and Lucio have already been hit by it. So the maximum that they could potentially be damaged by those fragments is 100.
So to me, it sounds like it'd be very complicated to code.
So yeah, then we get into the issue of do we actually know what we're fucking talking about? Game design is hard, and the engine might be.
Well, to me, it sounds
apparently
like
Diva
something where,
likes it.
like, if you shoot a scatter arrow and then it bounces around and it hits, like, you know, Tracer or Lucio, it then has to communicate multiple times between the server and the player.
Yeah.
How much damage they're taking, and then how much damage the other person's taking, and then how much total it is. And you get all this weirdness where if you have any amount of ping at all between these two players, between like Hanzo and like the server, it results in like really weird things where, you know, you could have the Schrodinger's tracer, right?
Yeah, right. Is the Tracer alive or dead?
No,
And you know, suddenly you'll rubber band back, and you know, someone might die. But
Wait, isn't
supposed to
Tracer
die.
just kind of like a vague Schrodinger's joke, technically? Like as a character, when you think about it?
Yeah.
Oh,
But I think it's something where it can't be, like, the process behind it cannot be too complicated, or else, like, you can't trust what the server is feeding you.
Yeah.
And having too many back and forths between the server and the player means that there's more chance for error,
Well,
especially
then-
if you get packet loss.
well, then why does it have to damage? Let's go ahead and just make it not damage. Just make it slow.
Then it just doesn't sound that useful.
Yeah,
And especially with Josh's original design, where
Or
you
bleed.
use the arrow to see where they're at, the scanner arrow to see where they're at, and then you shoot around the wall to get
Yeah.
them. It's like that's
Like, I'm pretty sure that's, like, Hanzo's initial design intent, and I think they realized for Hanzo, like, it wasn't really working. And I don't know if I begrudge them trying or doing this for Hanzo, because it makes him much more reliable. It's just, at the same time, he's actually better than McCree in a lot of respects. He has a
And he's
better
just-
ult.
And he's not unique anymore. So I shouldn't say that, but like he's just not like when Overwatch released, all the heroes were so fucking distinctive, right? Yeah, there were overlaps, but with changes like this, making them more reliable and bringing them more in line with, I guess, the overall design intent, just feels. I think the word I've been using for it is pretty apt. It's just kind of lame, and it just kind of feels like, oh, okay, yeah, like they gave us some nice things, but they took away kind of the fun toys of playing this character that made it feel like playing every character when it first launched felt entirely different, right? And admittedly, a bit of that I'm about to say might be just because I've spent so much time with the game since before it released, but now like some heroes are just kind of starting to feel samey because of the changes to try and bring them in line, right? Like, I understand fundamentally and mechanically there is a difference between Symmetra and Torbjorn's turrets, but it doesn't feel different, really. I mean, one I toss slightly closer
I
and
mean,
is more
one can
powerful.
stick to walls, the other can't.
Yeah, and one can stick to the walls, and I can't, but I'm still just hitting shift.
The range is way different, too.
Yeah, like the Symmetra turrets go way further, but all I'm doing is hitting shift, and now there's a turret. As opposed to Torbs, where it's like, yeah, like I gotta put up the turret, I gotta hit it with my hammer, I gotta take care of it. This is how I deal damage. This is my baby. Whereas Symmetra, it's like I have to set up a nest. I have to set up like a whole defensive system, a simulacrum of death.
Yeah, I miss doing that.
Like, and I gotta keep my teammates healthy because I gotta give them armor, or I gotta keep my teammates healthy because I gotta give them shields, or like I gotta make sure my deployables are like where they belong. As opposed to now, where it's like, yeah, Hanzo's more reliable and he's more in line, like competitively and reliable and slightly less bullshit. But like,
He loses identity, definitely.
yeah, he has a bow, which is cool.
And I think this is like the key paradox in Blizzard's design philosophy. They want their champions to be distinctive and unique, but at the end of the day, because of the demands of the player base and because of the demands of the game, they change all of the heroes in a way that makes them more similar. Because fluidity at the end of the day is what makes characters much more playable. And it has to feel good to play a character all the time. Or be at least somewhat viable.
Yeah. So, like, there are definitely changes that go towards that idea that I completely agree with. If we take it back to Torb, just tossing the turret out is fucking awesome. Like, I don't mind that change. But I hate the fact that it's now a tier 2. Or a tier 2 immediately. And we lost the whole scrap mechanic for it. I love that Symmetra's turrets you could just toss out. But we lost that awesome little like forward shield going, and we lost one of the only heroes that had 2 ultimates that you had to pick from. It felt like a strategy all unto itself, right? And I honestly just feel like Blizzard would be good to remember that. To remember that it's not you're not making classes. You're making characters. And playing those characters is way more powerful than playing any like class you can, because they have the opportunity to make you feel like that character you're playing through their design.
Your thoughts, Derek?
I'm more in line with what Court's saying, but at the same time, I don't want them to give up the competitiveness. I really like how they've been going with the Overwatch League and stuff. That's been making the game interesting. I think that I like what you said earlier, and I'm really stuck to that when you talked about Hanzo's design. I want them to remember their original designs for their characters when they are changing them or making updates, and I do want them to change them to fit into whatever power balance they need to be for the game to be balanced. But like I want the characters to be designed. I don't want it to feel like abilities were just thrown together because that's what works.
So I'm a bit torn, honestly. because there are other games that have gone through similar evolution that I think it's good to archive and keep your mistakes. Because honestly, I think, initial builds of like Mercy, of Torbjorn, of a lot of these characters were mistakes. Because they were built around a character concept. That, a lot of them did not work. But at the same time, I think that, getting rid of them is not the answer. It's actually just building more characters and learning from your mistakes.
I agree that they need to build more characters. I think everybody agrees on that.
Like Magic, like The Gathering, like that card game that's been around since like we were born, basically.
Yeah.
Like they went through the same growing pains. The only difference is that instead of just getting rid of everything, they took all the lessons they learned and then turned them into new cards and new expansions. And I think, I appreciate that Blizzard wants to make every character playable, but I think it'd behoove the game much more to just make more characters.
I
completely agree.
I totally agree. If they had to keep broken characters, but we got characters more consistently, then
I mean, broken,
that'd be fine.
Not like, overpowered, but broken as in like,
underpowered.
Not particularly great.
Like where Torb was at before his update.
Yeah. Like, why the fuck would you ever play as Genji?
Yeah, I mean, it's something where I feel like, the game would benefit from having, a little bit more overlap in hero abilities. And, mixing and matching. But, I think if you're going to make your heroes feel more same or lose their identity over time because you want to make it easier to play them, then why not make a new character that is that instead of, changing the characters that already exist?
Yeah, just
make their identities as being, old school characters.
Yeah, just make a whole section of Ashes and Soldier 76s. Just make them their own section of the character select. Just call them the baby selection. Oh, controversial. Anyway. Okay, so I think we should call that our time.
All right.
Anybody have any closing notes?
Make more characters, Overwatch, Blizzard, please.
Just do that. Just stop fucking with the characters we like.
I'd play the game a lot more if I felt like there was something interesting to come back to.
Also, new game modes, but I feel like that'll be a conversation that we can have next time.
Yeah.
Josh, anything?
Please, for a year, at least.
At least. Make it 6. Just give us a joke character on April Fools and see how it reacts.
I think 4 years fair. I think 6 years even better.
Also, fucking bring back the PvE mode so we can just play them when we want. Jesus fucking Christ.
All right, bud. I'm sure you'll want to talk more about those later.
Yeah, we can do a second Overwatch episode in the future.
I'm super fucking mad.
All right.
All right.
That wraps this up.
Yep, we don't have a sponsor, but thank you guys for listening.
See ya.
Later.